changing the world.
Okay, hour of 8:30 having arrived. I will call this meeting of the Trempealeau County Property Committee to order. We have, let's see, open meeting law requirements for the met through proper posting. We have a 14-item agenda. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. You were distributed minutes from the previous two meetings. Can we adopt them both at the same time? I will entertain a motion to adopt both sets of minutes as distributed.
Motion.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Members of the public will have a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. May be present in person or call in to make such comments. Comment by telephone, please call 715-538-1894. Comment may be extended or curtailed at the discretion of the committee or / board chair and after advisement by the committee. Samuel's Group. Kurt.
Morning, everyone. I'm going to provide a quick update on several things. First of all, we're still planning for a tour of the new building prior to your county board meeting next week, Monday. I believe the time is at 6 p.m. We'll kind of take in the board through, answer any questions that anybody has. Kurt and the team will be able to be here at 6. I will not be here right at 6 o'clock, but I will be here for the board meeting. But it's an intent to walk you through, kind of get an idea of where the project is in regards to completion. There may be some board members that haven't walked it before. This will be their first time, so they'll get an idea as to how we're progressing. Still on track to have substantially completed by the end of October. Again, we will still have 2 months of shakedown, and what shakedown is ultimately dry run of the jail until the first of the year, with the intention that we would move everybody over sometime after the first of the year. So we'll get into more of those details. We have been having monthly departmental meetings with those departments that are going to be moving in. We've got another one coming up this week, right? Wednesday, Thursday? We got one coming up this week. So that continues to progress as we're moving along. So safety has been good. No issues related to safety. Again, we're getting down to crunch time, so it's going to be a lot of things coming together at one time in regards to all of the tradespeople that are there and finishes that are going on. So that's kind of an update on the overall progress. Yep.
Question on the shakedown. What kind of staffing requirements? And I'm assuming that shakedown period is also a training period for existing employees.
So
we're doing in teams, or we still have to maintain minimum staffing levels in the current facility, right?
Yeah, so that'll be something that Brett and Joan will obviously give you a better answer, but what we have typically seen with counties is that throughout the course of the construction, they're writing their new policies and procedures for the new building, because obviously the policies of this building are different than what they've done before in regards to operationally. And the dry run is that they will then take staff in to be able to function all the cameras, to function all the intercoms, to be able to deal with door controls, to run it through its cycles, right? So what I have seen other counties do, and I don't know exactly what Joan or the sheriff plan on doing, is that they will cycle people through. They're still operating the jail, but they'll bring people in and it'll be a training session for them to utilize it. And we will find doors that need to be adjusted. We will find things that it's working the bugs out of that secure facility before we actually move inmates over. The DOC will be involved with that. Brad Hoover will be an integral part of that to make sure that compliance is being met with all of the facilities and security elements before it's moved in. But from a staffing perspective, you're right. They will still function in the jail while they're training their staff.
Thank you.
So, yep. I'll give you an update on the renovation. So I did share it with a couple of you members who were here earlier. We do have the floor plan pretty much wrapped up outside of Tad and the team are doing an investigation of how are we going to make the connection between the two buildings. And there are some structural members that differ from what's existing versus what some of the drawings have shown. We're going to have to slide the door that's connecting it to the south further than what was anticipated, which is going to adjust some of the layout that's on that second floor. So our goal is to have that floor plan and those documents, bid documents, ready to bring to you next month for you to approve. Once those are approved, then they will be hitting the street in regards to getting competitive bids. And the bid process will be, we get it on the street, and then we would bring back bids to you in your October meeting for you to have a number. You won't have to approve them at that October meeting. You'll have about 45 days to approve them or reject them, but our goal would be to get the bids in those phases. We talked about breaking it up in different pieces and phases of how we're going to construct it so that you can decide how much of the work do you want to do. If it's in its entirety, if you want to do it in steps, we'll break that out and have that for you in October. We will have the contractors bid that work so that the work would start after you occupy and you move into the new building. So when they bid, they're going to be bidding knowing that a start date would happen after the first of the year. So just to let you understand, that connection of the structural is probably going to tie into some cost impacts that we will be bringing to you next month, but obviously some floor plan adjustments that are there as well. So we did go through with all of the departments again. We did make some tweaks to land management. They wanted some additional space, so we took some toilet rooms and changed those into storage rooms to be able to accommodate their requirements. Health was able to give up one of their toilet rooms as well so that we have more storage. So at the end of the day, I think that overall all of your departments were great to work with. They are understood that you've got some parameters that you have to live within, but we were able to come up with a layout that satisfied everybody. So
A note on something that's come up very recently, positioning land management. Initially, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, your desire was to go into the sheriff's administration because you had garages and there would be no real need for any adjustment. You'd have more space, which I understand has been part of your problem with the South Courtroom. I'm just thinking, if you guys go there, the cost would be reduced from the amendments that have been requested in the South Courtroom with doing away with those restrooms. Is that?
if we just move that department into the sheriff's office and just say we're going to paint the walls and not do any major changes, obviously that would be more cost effective. But again, we haven't gone through that exercise. We've really been focusing on the layout on second floor. But if we would just minimize it and say we're moving into this space and you're going to utilize it as is, that would save some money.
It's my understanding that the way things sit currently, UW Extension was scheduled to go into the sheriff's admin area. I don't know what their square footage requirements are, but my assumption is they would fit better into the South Courtroom than land management would.
Potentially.
We're still dealing with a significant lack of money, shall I put it that way? You know, over the weekend, I've been thinking that it's not popular, but I'm sitting here and it's dawned on me that maybe trying to make everybody happy isn't the best way for me to proceed. That maybe we should start doing things that are responsible to the taxpayer, and at some point in the future, if, let's say we follow through on my suggestion, some people are going to be upset, but eventually they'll get over it. You know, I'm going to move on. They can be upset with me from a distance then. But I don't know, I'd like to hear some discussion about this, because at one point, Mike, that area met your needs. In fact, I remember you saying that you would have garages for some vehicles. You would also be able to have an area where your people coming in from outdoors wouldn't have to track mud throughout the building, et cetera. So let's kick this around, people.
So let me understand the proposal. Proposal would be is that the space that we currently have land management in the renovation portion would be designed and built that way. It's just that a different department would occupy it. The sheriff's office as is would remain unchanged outside of potentially some upgrades of interior finishes. And does that option work, or are you wanting us to look at the space that's currently designed for land management on second floor to be revisited to meet the needs for UW Extension?
Well, my assumption is I don't have all the information necessary to make a decision. So
Yep.
let's talk about it.
Okay.
Because I'm going at it from strictly a money standpoint. I don't know if this would be viable if we weren't going to save money. And that's the driving force behind it.
How many employees are in UW Extension?
Well, I don't know. Well, Pat she's like 3 or 4 different counties, Pat Malone. So you've got a receptionist, Ag, Steve, Adam, 4,
5.
5.
I thought there was 6, but
Might
I can tell you that Pat has been extremely workable with us. I don't think she'd be opposed to it. I just wanted to know, because obviously if we're putting these design documents together, if we want to make some adjustments, I will have to let the design team know sooner than later. Otherwise, these dates will end up shifting. I'm not opposed to looking at it. It's just a matter of what does that second floor look like? Can we keep it the way it is? Maybe that's a meeting with Pat to say, could you move in here? The other one would be talk to Mike's team and say, does it work if we just move you in to the administrative piece of the sheriff's right now without any changes? I mean, to me, that would be the quickest way to get this accomplished.
And that, of course, in my mind, it has to be done before we have anybody change any drawings. I mean, and I'm looking at it strictly from a financial standpoint.
Yep.
If by putting the extension office up there, you still have to do the same work to the restrooms, I don't know if it would make any sense. Maybe it wouldn't save us any money, because my assumption is the extension going in the sheriff's admin is a move-in, paint on the walls kind of thing. So that's a wash. It all depends on what has to be done, what doesn't have to be done on the second floor.
I can pull the team together and have a couple of quick meetings with those 2 departments to see what changes, and if there is a savings, pursue some of that, if you'd like.
So I just have a couple of questions. And so, okay, you met with all the department heads, and there was, I thought, an agreement that the spaces were all going to be sufficient.
Yep.
And now there's not sufficiency in a department or 2? Well, help me
The
out
last
there.
meeting we had, the only one that had concern was Mike. The last time that we went through the final floor plan and we changed some toilet rooms into storage rooms, and at that point, then we met compliance. Everybody was good with it. I think the discussion is does it make sense for UW Extension to be up on second floor so that we could have a closer proximity to some of the garages or spaces for land management? That's fair to say?
Well, my thought is so we don't have to spend money on changing the restrooms on the second floor.
Yeah. If the restrooms remain unchanged, it saves money. Absolutely. And to be able to meet the needs of land management, we do need to, what we're planning to do is take the fixtures out. We're not going to gut all the plumbing. We're going to cap them in the wall to be as cost effective as possible. So it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's thousands of dollars that we would save, but it's not hundreds of thousands.
So the decision to do this was strictly because of storage space requirements?
You have to talk to Mike.
Is Mike here? Could we get a? Sure.
First off, I think a little bit of history, the whole advocacy on the garage and all that, that was not me, that was my predecessor. So that was long before I got here that was talked about. The idea of storage and the restrooms, that was discussed in February, and we had discussed with Samuel's group about trying to revamp that space. And the reason why I brought up this concern is when the plans came through in June again, the plumbing was still showed on those like it was not being removed, and that was very different from the conversation we had in February. If that plumbing was not showed on the drawings, then I wouldn't have had any concern. So if that is indeed the case, if that's going to show, I haven't seen the latest drawings, maybe that it's demonstrated on there. If that plumbing is going to be capped, and just as you spoke today, if that is truly what the design is going to be, then I have no issue with it. It's just that over the months, we've had these conversations, and what was discussed was never showed up in the plans, and that was my concern.
My apologies, because in this process, I remember you saying land management is fine where you're at. You don't need any more space. You don't need to move. And then I documented that. And then after that, I thought you said sheriff's admin would be okay. And then you wanted to move to the second floor. And didn't feel a need for the restrooms. So,
exactly. The restrooms are not needed, and it's a much more valuable space for us to use them as storage. And I thought we were on the same page in February, and then that never showed up on the designs, and that really concerned me because don't want to get down the road and have to change things or just not meet our needs. So if that's truly the case, everything's fine. We just haven't seen what was discussed on the plans.
okay.
So back to my question earlier then,
Sounds like we're fine.
well, we are if the plans
There.
include removal of the restrooms,
Mm-hmm.
which goes back to the chair's comments about cost, and why remove the restrooms if it's going to cost a lot more money? Since there's plenty of storage space. I mean, we got a whole jail that's going to be vacated, so I'm concerned about storage space and cost myself. So, Mike, can you give us more information on why that storage space in that area is so critical?
Convenience, it's close to where our workers, where our offices are, and we wouldn't have to walk down the hall or down into the basement to get stuff. There's stuff that's nice to have close at hand to operating day-to-day businesses.
So, I mean, goes back to the cost thing again, right? Really, if it's $1,000 to rip them out and have the storage, and then that makes sense to have the convenience. If it's $40,000 more to rip them all out just to make storage, I wouldn't sign up for that either. So I think we need to know more details on the cost of the whole thing, right? It's because this is just not this one area. That we need to know what the whole thing's going to cost us before we can move ahead.
Well, and you won't have the final number until we bid it out, right? So we can give you some parameters now to say, hey, if we would eliminate the fixtures in these storage areas, future storage areas, what's the number versus if we have to do renovation for UW extension. So that's an exercise we can look through. If it's minimal cost to in regards to the two comparisons, we'll keep moving forward with what we have proposed right now of those bathrooms being basically turned into closets.
Who gets to decide what minimal means?
You tell me.
Well, I need to.
I heard $1,000.
I need some numbers.
I heard $1,000 per room, so $3,000 is the number.
And are there other departments that would be affected by this late change?
Right now, what we're talking about, the only department that was affected was health, because as Mike had talked about, we did not show that bathroom being in his suite, and now it is in his suite, but health is fine with it. So outside of that department, no other departments should be
So
impacted.
just the three.
Yeah, and in my mind, health is already good with what we're proposing, so it's not an issue.
I have a question. Mike, I haven't been privy to any of this planning, so I'm very naive. I know initially, if I recall correctly, the land management was set to go into the admin office area. And I guess I don't know why that changed.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but, and I wouldn't know if it was in the admin area. I'm not sure what you mean by the administration.
Well, I guess I'm
area.
wondering if that was the initial, the tentative plan to move into that area.
No, I'm not sure.
Why that changed, I guess from the standpoint of access to the outside, the access of equipment, the chance to clean up due to the showers and the facilities in that space, it would seem like it'd be perhaps a little more ideal.
So you're talking about the sheriff's office?
Yeah, the
Okay.
admin.
Yeah, again, that was my predecessor's view on things. No staff that works in land management sees a need for showers. No staff has an issue with, has garage storage needs. That was, no one in the department sees a need for that. I've discussed these things with staff, and again, that was the previous director that saw
But in
that
terms
as being very
in terms
important.
of access in and out of the building, it'd be so much more convenient than riding elevators back and forth with the equipment, wouldn't it? And be able to keep your staff vehicles quite close.
The closeness of the vehicles is not a concern. I mean, they're in that, my understanding, we're going to be able to park in that parking lot. And my recollection, the previous design was a garage for one vehicle. That just wouldn't address all the vehicles, so.
No, but the vehicles are now stored outside.
Correct.
So if they were stored directly outside, there it would be a matter of a few steps to
Sure.
get to those vehicles.
Right, right.
The extension service, I can see more on that floor, that second floor than your office. I've watched people go in and out with the equipment over the last 20 years, and it seemed like it was quite convenient to exit directly to the outside from your office space where you are now. This would enable you to have basically a very similar situation.
And I know there's been some discussion on security, whether or not there would be the ability to access that garage from inside. I don't know what decisions have been made on that.
Would it be a fair question to ask, Mike, if you would be opposed to move into the sheriff's admin? Are you opposed to that?
I like the second floor. I like the way it is designed right now. Again, with that area, that would meet the needs of the department.
But we don't know the cost difference between setting the office space upstairs for extension as opposed to.
Yeah, that's where it really comes down to. If extension's going to go up there, we would need to do an evaluation. If extension could do something at a lesser cost than what is proposed for land management, having open space, because ultimately we're redoing that second floor courtroom space, right? So if extension could live up there cheaper than what land management would be, that would answer your question to say, does it make sense? And that's the exercise that we would have to give you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I certainly would encourage that exercise. I think, Dan, you're suggesting that exercise, aren't you?
Yep.
Yep.
We can do it.
Anything else on this topic?
Anything from IT, does that concern you either way?
No.
Sounds good.
Well, no.
All right, well, I will talk to, without doing a complete redesign, I will talk to Venture about identifying what would need to be done for UW Extension in that space and then run some numbers. And if the UW Extension renovation up there is more cost effective, then that would be the way we proceed. Is that the direction that I'm getting?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
My assumption, Kurt, is that you're not done.
No, I've got more. Obviously, last month I didn't have a change order log for you. This is the one that has happened over the last 2 months again. There are a bunch of small ones. The biggest ones that are coming in, you'll see the $17,000 and there's another $4,000 one. Those are those panels where I told you that the access panels, as we get to a location in those secure areas, if an access panel has not been specified because of the location, we're adding an access panel so that Jeremy's team can get in there. It's a coordination effort to make sure that he's not having to crawl into nooks and crannies to access valves, to access junction boxes, all those sorts of things. So wherever we can, we're getting them into chases that are accessible, but there are some that need to be done. The rest of these are small coordination issues. I want you to understand that there are several other requests that come to our team that are rejected, so it's not like they just walk in the door, but this is where we stand right now. Be prepared that next month we will have the structural elements that are tied into the connection of what we have to do with potential changes for that tie, as well as we have a fence that needs to go along the perimeter of the building and a fence to enclose around the generator that had not been identified on the documents. We identified that there needed to be a fence, but the type isn't specified. So Kurt's working on that with contractors to come up with those costs. So we'll be bringing them to you next month. But obviously we're getting close to the end here, so things are starting to wrap up. These are obviously are small coordination issues that are there, and none of these are large enough that need action on your end. So.
Any question, the caulking, that's a lot of caulk. Wouldn't that have been automatically in the bid for around the beds?
So what we ended up doing is those were the closure plates for those added additional bunks that were in there, and that's security caulking. That's a different level of caulk that needs to be done than just your average go to Menards and buy yourself silicone. It's actually a hardened caulk that you can't get in and scratch and dig out from that perspective. So,
right, but I mean, if you would, but the beds were in the original bid, correct?
The additional bunks were not. We had those
weren't?
identified that were there. So additional scope.
Anything on the cancellation of the Cat 3?
Got any updates?
Not from B&B.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe bring up what we did there, if you don't mind, just from a cost-saving perspective, so they understand what we're working on.
There was Cat 3, which is phone lines running throughout the building that we definitely did not ask for, but somehow found their way into the plans. We're removing all of it. There is some potential phone line needed. The elevators and the fire panels are 2 spaces. We've asked around departments, and so far none of them are requiring additional analog phone lines. So I just removed it all from the bid, and then if cabling of that variety is required, I would just contract with a local provider and we'll just run it. It's looking like the elevators, the Cat 6 that is running to the space already will suffice, and the fire panel, people are thinking Cat 6 would work as well, but I don't have official confirmation on that. So it looks like we're going to be covered without any additional costs there, and we're just removing it all.
So that's all I have for updates, other than what would you guys like me to present to the board? Obviously, you're going to have the tour and then board. Would you just want me here for Q&A after the tour if people have questions? Because I was thinking PowerPoint, but they're already going to see it in real time walking through there. Do you want me to be here for Q&A and then just talk about kind of what we're looking at over the course of the balance of this year to get substantially complete? What is it? What's the discussion on kind of a grand opening? Explain the shakedown process. Identify the movement of all those sorts of things. Just kind of a large level discussion of what happens from now until you occupy. Does that good for the,
Yeah.
I think a timeline from here on
Okay.
of everything that
just some milestone dates?
close up the
and-
new part of the building, what's it gonna take, where are we at, all that sort of
Sure.
thing.
Okay.
With it being fresh on the mind from walking through, I think that would be good, but then transitioning that to, okay, the renovation for the existing building, what's still outstanding with regard to the final planning,
Bid time,
cost
bid time
decisions, at
approval.
what point where we get all that done and when will work begin, and if we could possibly have a end date of when all that could possibly be done.
Yep.
I think that would be great to have a kind of a vision of that moving forward.
Sounds good.
Kurt, I have one more question back on your, the statements of the connections. Was connecting from the new building to the old building part of the original contract
No.
and bid out, or is it?
All we had contracted was basically getting the opening cut, right? So what are we doing structurally? But coming in and doing that renovation piece, it was intended to be in the project of the renovation phase, but since the funding for that phase has gone away, it was out there, but it wasn't in this initial bid phase. So the contractors only bid on getting the opening through the wall.
And we have the opening through the wall now?
No, not yet. Tad's doing some layout right now to be able to figure out how are we going to make the changes, so that is in progress. We're gonna plan to do that in September, late part of September. So, trying to minimize the disruption of those departments as long as we can. So,
Understood, thank you.
that's all I had, Dan.
Okay. Next on the agenda is previously approved easement. Is that you, Rick?
Yes, it's you. Rick?
Just to make sure. So, sorry, I talked to the judge because I had court this morning, so. I'm gonna hand out.
Well, you might. Basically explained it.
Thank you.
Told them what the budget's gonna be. No idea. Your call.
All right, so. I want to start talking until I got a microphone. So this is a document that is correcting a previous document. So a little bit of background. In December of 2022, the village of Trempealeau and Trempealeau County entered into an agreement to provide them with a utility easement along certain properties that are located in the village. The reason for the easement is they're going to be doing a bunch of utility work. Actually, I think is already completed, but they entered into an agreement with a number of other individuals besides Trempealeau County. The legal description that was in that original document was incorrect, but it's been recorded. And so the Davie Engineering has provided a corrected legal description, which is part of this document. And so in order to correct the legal description, I've worked with Rose, Joe, and Mike to get this corrected. I've also had conversations with the administrator from Village of Trempealeau, and they are in agreement with this as well. So what this document is doing is it's correcting the legal description that was previously recorded regarding the utility easement across property owned by the Trempealeau County that's located in the Village of Trempealeau. So that's what this document does. It has gone to environmental land use. They've reviewed it and approved it. Comes to you here and then still has to go to the full county board. Upon approval, then it'll get recorded in Rose's office and then that will be taken care of.
This was dealt with how many years ago? Do you recall?
The original one was in December of 2022. There are the other parties that signed. I mean, they signed anywhere from middle of 2022 to just last month or so. Yeah.
So is it the last page here that is the new
Correct.
updated?
Yep, and then the map just shows the picture of it there on the plat of survey. So
What was wrong with the original one?
there were two things. One was it was listed as a government lot, so that word was removed. And I apologize, I don't remember which section, but there was a missing, Rose, you might know better than me,
There was a bearing that was wrong.
bearing.
So that was, and it wasn't caught until it passed through all the committees, and then Mike tried to record it in our office, and that's when it was caught. It was never reviewed with the county surveyor, so we reviewed it with the county surveyor, and now it's corrected.
Correct.
We just need a motion to approve, right?
Correct.
Motion to approve, Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we signing one of these now or waiting till?
Wait till the county board, because
Okay.
the other committee hasn't signed it yet.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Mr. Robertson, IT Department update.
Apologies in advance, this is going to be brutal, but it's your own fault. Early Monday morning meetings, I don't have time to think about streamlining my presentation, so.
Do you have a printed version so I can have that for the minutes?
I have a printed version that I will be handing out, but I didn't want to put it in front of you and distract you from the other glorious stuff we have to go over. First updates from IT's perspective, I thought I'd start out with the Justice Center. The timing of the transition, Samuels Group's working on the process and trying to come up with, I believe you're presenting the actual timeline for how you're going to develop the moving into the space. One of the key departments that is going to be essential to function here at the county is the dispatch department, since it's the backup jail control space. They monitor all the cameras, they monitor security systems. Where they're located actually matters. The equipment they have right now that they work on, the primary piece of equipment that I pay $17,000 a year to provide support for, is called a Vesta panel, and that's how they integrate all their communications. And it's 8-year-old technology, and the Sheriff's Department has written a grant and submitted it to replace this equipment. And they are, I'm thinking they're in a very good position to actually get the bid accepted. If it's accelerated to the specs that we can hope for, but not necessarily get, you're looking at a decision probably by December, and then equipment being available in the first quarter of 2024, and then actual migration then is impacted, because I really would not recommend spending thousands of dollars to move 8-year-old equipment that you're just replacing with different equipment. If they get the grant, they can put in the equipment, the new 911 lines, the trunks, everything they need to operate outside of their Baycom radio solution, and they can test that in their new space while they live in their old space working on the old stuff. It'll allow them to pilot this moving forward, train their staff up, and then when they move, it's a much easier process of just the individual moving over to the space. Baycom flips the switch for radios, and away you go. If you decide that dispatch has to be occupying the space November 1st or December 1st, that is out the window. I'm going to have to pay to migrate the existing equipment over and then just potentially throw it all out in March or April anyway. So can the building function with dispatch in their old location?
Sure.
Has that square footage been assigned to someone else?
Yeah, but it wouldn't have to be done right away. I mean, I think what Tim is proposing is definitely doable. We just need to figure out. I think, yeah.
There are some things. How is the public, right now, the public, when they need to speak to a deputy about an issue, they call dispatch from a phone they pick up outside the sheriff's office. How does that work going forward if the phone in the new location is where they're entering? How does that connect?
Mm-hmm.
How do we have them monitoring the new video solution in the new space if we haven't run it back into the old? We have some things to work out.
Is March or April, is that the time that they would be ready to move, or that's when you would know about the approval of the grant?
That's when we would be hopeful that they would be able to move. But anybody that's worked in government and grant processes know it can be trying to.
Any word on round 2 for that grant process should the application initially be unsuccessful?
This year's funds, according to, I spoke to, Carmen mentioned this recently, that the funding this year's grants for Next Gen 911 is substantial, and then next year is 4-fold increase. They intend to fully flip every dispatch in the state in somewhere in the next 18 to 24 months.
Tim, so question, is it a foregone conclusion that the Vesta panel is going to be replaced?
Yes, but whether it's in this year's grant cycle or next is the unknown. We will
So-
probably know, I would think, into September, start of October.
So the question really is, if we decide to purchase it anyway, can we get that money put back into the wherever it belongs, or it's you? Okay, well, you already bought it, so you don't need the grant.
Yeah, that's the genius of grants.
Good question.
Yeah, it,
Had to ask.
I haven't seen a grant that works that way yet, but if it does, they usually tell you up front, you can cover everything you've already purchased, but yeah, I'm doubtful, but we can look into it.
Maybe they'll loan us the new one and not for free.
90-day free trial.
The vendor that we're working with is very much wanting to be
I
successful.
mean, one way or
with
the
our
other, they're going to
partnership.
get their money. They just got to float it for a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility. They've been very helpful, and the dispatch team seems well pleased with the proposals they've made so far. So
Otherwise, it's just try to make it work where we're at, so we don't have to spend the extra money.
How much is the
Well,
grant?
to Tim's point, we may have to look at, if it stays where it's at, what does it do for tie into the existing campus?
yeah, that I want you to be aware of those concerns. Regardless of whether the Vesta panel gets replaced with a new solution, there are issues with leaving them in place and moving them over, because how do they monitor a video system over here? Because that's the other piece. I don't know the timelines for the connection of the systems right now. So I'm currently in a fog as to telling you about how we transition. If the conduit that connects the two buildings doesn't have a fiber run included in it as part of the budget for the new building, I would have to come to you and ask for money to actually run the fiber that connects the two spaces.
Could it be as simple as having somebody in both locations? That's not optimal, but having part monitor there and part over here until that makes.
No.
What you're suggesting requires staffing in both locations?
Yeah, they need to work together. They have to be in the same space.
Will you know more about this particular topic 1 month from now?
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe. I think Samuel's group will have a lot more information for us about the transition process and what's being connected and what costs are being borne as part of the Justice Center project versus the remodel or my own budget. Every month we go forward, we'll know more about what those costs are going to be and what the timeline will be. But I need you to be aware that right now there are a lot of variables and unknowns with regard to that. In touring the new building, now that all the glass and most of the doors appear to be in, cell phone coverage blows. It's really bad in there. So I removed those from the process because until the building was built, I didn't see it necessary to include cell phone boosters in a building that you don't know if you need them or not. And they were rather pricey. So I just want you to be aware. I'm not recommending mitigation of that. I think once the building is opened, there's Wi-Fi literally everywhere. So for most communication needs with a smartphone, people will be just fine. In the sheriff's office, we have 3 AT&T FirstNet boosters that are going to be placed so that if there's emergency operations center gets called into action or any kind of sheriff's emergency is happening, they will have full connectivity with their FirstNet devices throughout the sheriff's office. Those are no cost from AT&T. The only cost is to me to run some cabling to them, power and cabling, and then put an antenna up on the roof of the new building.
Has the sheriff's department migrated completely to FirstNet as far as phones go?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the issues we will probably have to address in the coming months is what our disaster recovery plans are during the transition. I know it might seem like overly cautious, but when you're in the middle of people migrating from one space to another and then there's a massive power outage or an accident of some kind, I think we should have some plans, and this committee would likely have to have some part of that. So you should be aware of how we're going to be thinking through that. I mean, Jeremy and I can just work out some stuff that we just write down that this is what we do, but I don't know what committee would need to see that or if they even care, because it'd be like a 6-month transition, and then you're going to be operating under new standard operating procedures once you get into the space. So there is that transition. The existing courthouse remodel. I'm having some concerns. I've been going over the proposals and plans with Brian from IMAG, and I'm having some concerns about maintainability. As this committee knows, the IT department here, our number one goal is we consider in every decision is security, number two is maintainability, and number three is productivity. The cabling and power in this building, what would be a kind word to use for it? Jerry-rigged?
That works. Yeah.
We have cables stuffed into nooks and crannies where they don't belong. We have conduit that exceeds 100% capacity. We have power issues. So while it might not be attainable because of excess cost, I would like this committee to be focused on the information you received from Samuels about the redesign and remodel. The proposal I would make is consider removing as much cabling as possible from the existing structure and rerun network connections to the spaces, even in those spaces where not much remodeling is going on.
I understand it to be
Do you want that to
true.
be the basis of design, or do you want us to do it as an alternate? Because I can do it both ways. Because I think, but Brian, the proposal that I told Brian was, we don't have any money.
Right.
So we got to do something cost effective. So we could have an alternate that is pull it all out and run new as an alternate, and then they would know what the number is.
Yes.
And then it would all be laid out there.
Yes, that sounds amenable to me. We would like you to be aware of the cost, and then there's also the variables, like if you're touching a wall or you're actually doing remodel, I would ask for new stringing of new cable at that point.
Correct. If a new wall goes in.
Existing walls, we could leave those alone and then make that a future project, but for security and maintainability of the space, it would behoove us to consider that as a feature. At least IT would be asking for it. It's entirely up to you as to whether you accept that.
It's my assumption that when anyone has to run new cable, you don't necessarily take the unused cable out, and that is in fact responsible for the fact that a lot of that conduit is packed tight.
Well, and we have stuff that's just hanging in the ceiling off of pipes attached to, with zip ties to vents and air.
All of Tim's stuff is free hanging. All of my stuff is stuffed into conduits that, again, like you said, there are dead circuits in those conduits, but the wires were never pulled. A lot of Tim's stuff we found where previous people have zip tied them to the sewage lines, to the cast iron sewage lines, and then the rust from that ends up screwing up the insulation on his Cat 5s and stuff.
What?
It's we don't want to besmirch the character of those that came before us. It's just you did what you had to do, I guess, and it just.
Well,
I
we were in
how
a
expensive
hurry.
is a J hook? Anyhow,
Better with budgeting.
yeah, with the unknowns, because the plans aren't done yet, I'm in the middle of my budget process. I'm having a hard time trying to understand exactly what kind of spending I'm going to have next year regarding new spaces, old spaces, who's moving where. It's difficult to predict. I think the design team is doing everything they can to try and make a one price, flip the switch, here you go, but I have to be aware that there's other possibilities. There are many elements that aren't connected between the two buildings. And again, this isn't, Samuel's group did what they were tasked to do, which was to design a new justice center. And we tried to influence the decision makers to include the cost for tying to the existing systems. It's my understanding that the cameras in this building, it's not part of the plan to connect them to the new system. And so that's a cost that's going to have to be borne, because we can't function with two different security camera systems. It should be.
I think where the divide was is when it was intended to be designed into the next phase. When that phase didn't have funding, that's where you're seeing the separation.
Right,
You know what I mean?
but you had to do that because you got to deliver on a one thing and he can't jump into the next one without any funds. So it is what it is. But we're facing some situations, and this committee will be making decisions, and you need to be aware. There are things like panic buttons, PA systems, video camera systems, door security systems. These costs are going to be built into that remodel. Maybe, maybe not. How do we connect them to the existing systems? I know for a fact we're going to have 2 separate fire panels for the 2 buildings, correct? Correct. And if that ends up being the only thing, that would be great, because we really like, I think we've said day one, we want one system to maintain for the facility as a whole, not 2 separate systems. It becomes untenable moving forward in that regard. I was curious, the conversation earlier, I thought that was really good discussion for you to have regarding the departments. There are probably other departments you may want to look at. We've never, as department heads, I don't know if we got direction as to what your priorities were. Productivity versus citizen access versus maintainability. It appears to be cost was the primary driver, but when making decisions on cost, that's great, but we're curious as to the location of where people are moving and whatnot. How do we move forward on that when the inevitable happens and somebody says, well, this isn't going to work here? Is that fall back to this committee forever? What are the plans going forward on? I ask because I'm leaning towards asking for a second floor wiring closet. Right now, making changes, we have this tiny little wiring closet on the first floor that feeds the entire building, and it's very difficult to reach some spaces from there. We're over 300 feet on some of them, and it gets to be a problem. And then it's also underneath water lines. So if I add a second floor wiring closet, where do I put it? Who do I go to figure out that? And I've talked it over with Brian Bopp as to where we'd prefer, but I'm wondering if that needs to go in front of you first, because you're the ones who have the set of priorities as to how you make a decision regarding that, or am I telling the designer to do something that I don't have the authority to do?
Well, I think we're trying to be as efficient as we can and keep it as low cost as we can, but we still got to make your team productive and efficient. So, I mean, we're all, I mean, I'm under the impression that we're going to have to make some tweaks down the road anyway. But right now, we'd like to keep the cost as low as we can, but you still don't want to take anything away from the departments that they need.
So to define the direction that I gave the design team was, there's no money. Let's reuse as much as we can with a minimal renovation. That was the marching orders to them. What Tim is proposing here, I don't think is out of line to add another communications closet on second floor. And I think it's going to be more cost than just if we would stick down there. But I think what you're getting at is, are we okay with making this a basis of a bid? Because it's really one of those things they have to design around. And as the engineers are reaching out to both Tim and Jeremy, because that's the phase we're at right now, we're talking about that MEP infrastructure. And when I tell them reuse as much as possible, some of them go, we can, but is that the best long-term decision? That's what we're running into right now. And that's what this is stemming from probably a conversation with you and Brian. I'm sure you're going to hear from Paul and Corey and the gang, Jeremy, about we can do this, but is this long-range planning sort of a deal? But obviously there's dollars associated with it. So,
Question, does distance on wiring affect functionality?
Yes.
If you're beyond a certain,
yep.
okay, that
We
would
don't
change
have
the,
we don't have the range to get to the DA's office from that first floor wiring closet. And
no matter how much
right.
wire you've got.
If water spills onto my switches in that first floor wiring closet, I have nowhere that I can connect 2/3 of the courthouse from. Because the basement closet will not reach up. The TV studio closet, I don't have conduit to run it through. And I'd like to eliminate that. There's questions as to whether that would be a good long-term solution. If we give up some space in the IT, where you've assigned IT to live in the future building, there's a closet there that we expanded a little bit, make it meet the requirements. That is a central location in the building that we could handle first floor and second floor wiring in perpetuity. And we could even backhaul it to the new data center conveniently in the new building. So it does afford us a good long-term solution that gets us out of that tiny little closet, and we can better serve from there. So I'd like for that to be considered, but I didn't want to overstep my place in making that design recommendation.
It sounds to me like having a little bit of foresight into emergency situations, things you weren't thinking about, makes that solution more tenable than not. Again, there's a cost function. Can we get the bid with or without and say, okay, now here's your laundry list of things we're gonna do, and here's all of the a la carte things that you said we could or couldn't do based on cost, and we can say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
That one's probably a hard one to have as an alternate. I mean, I can talk to the engineer, because it's obviously a basis of, are we rerunning everything to one location or the other? He almost would have to design it twice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you don't want to do that, but I know where you're going.
That's where I was going, because, okay, if we put that in, okay, now we can do this and do this and do that. Now there's this whole, where does it stop?
That's a tough one to do an add alternate on, where the other one was simple, right? Either, you know what I mean? It's hard.
If you'd like, I could we could do a tour after your meeting. I could show you that first floor wiring closet. Only 2 of you can go in at a time. So,
What are you suggesting that we consider building into this plan at this point with this closet? A closet is easy, but the infrastructure has to go in too, I'm assuming.
closets aren't easy. They have to have a fire rating above a normal space.
Okay.
And then I have to have conduit above the false ceiling, both to the hallway and then to the IT space. So it's not a normal room in that regard, and then there's power and then the air handling and all such. So it might have to grow the closet by a couple feet.
Would you have to get new switches, or would you relocate existing?
Well, that's the genius. This committee approved a $500,000 investment back in 2021 for 2022 to update the network core, and add a virtualized data center.
Okay.
And my team was able to work with vendors, and not only did we get those two things accomplished, not to the full degree that we had hoped when we proposed it, but we used that to fund the purchase of all the access points and all the switches for both buildings. So we have everything we need for the new space. But where we put those stacks of shiny new switches I'd really rather put them in stacks right next to the IT office as opposed to down in that first floor closet. Now, again, if you were to rewire everything, that would be ideal, because then everything would run back to that closet, so we could service everything in this old building from that one space. I know that that's not going to come to pass. There's just not enough funds to rerun everything. So we're still going to have that closet in place, but it does afford, if we go this direction, the future directors and future property committees will be able to say, okay, we got to clean this mess up. We got people can't work right because their network doesn't work. And you just move it up to that second floor space and rewire it. So.
But in reality, what you're saying is we're going to put the load on the future taxpayers for doing that because it needs to be done.
That's your decision. I wouldn't recommend that. I say you should run everything back to this closet, but at least you should have the flexibility to do that should you decide that you don't have enough funds to do it.
Yeah.
As far as existing courthouse remodel, we do have some concerns that Jeremy will probably address some of them regarding if when you're moving some departments because of construction going on, where are you going to move them? Security concerns, are we going to have enough network connections, badge readers to let them in? Some departments have pretty strict requirements about who can be in their space. So there's going to be a lot of work for my staff and Jeremy's staff on that. I want you to be aware of that. Security, that's it for your stuff. So thank you very much for sticking around.
No, not really. Stuff that he's already addressed, that I'll bring it up anyway.
Thanks, Kurt.
The cyber insurance for Trempealeau County, I believe, is County Mutual, and I've been receiving the the policies through HR. They send them down for review, and so far they are not asking for us to take certain mitigation procedures that other government agencies are being forced to by their cyber insurance providers. We have 2 security elements that we don't have that are recommended, and it's the word on the IT grapevine, other county directors and people that I've discussed with, that it's only a matter of time before our cyber insurance is going to insist on certain security measures in order to provide us with insurance. And when that comes to pass, of course, you'll have to make decisions regarding, do we just go without because we can't afford this. But I wanted you to I went out and took time this year to meet with multiple security solution providers. And I wanted you to be aware of what these costs are for future. The industry best practices on this measure can wildly vary depending on who you read. But we went out and we found a vendor that delivers, basically what they're promising is, it's like having 3 security staff members in your department. All they do is security all day long, and it's 24/7, 365. You have a live human, dedicated team monitoring your networks, internal and exterior, monitoring your logging files and whatnot, and it's a true. That's the industry recommendation. Sat through a couple demonstrations, very impressive stuff. The cost would be $165,000 a year for that service.
Oh, so we can contract for that service?
Basically, yeah, it provides everything you would need to provide the level of security that industry best practices say we should meet. The next step down was a solution that basically is what they call EDR or MDR, Managed Direct Response. It's basically antivirus plus, where they're monitoring your network, and if something pops up, they alert you to its presence and can give you some direction as to how to mitigate said security breach. And then there's this thing called a SIM. It's an acronym I can't ever remember, but basically it's an advanced logging tool that can look for trouble on your network. A premium solution of that nature runs about $72,000 per year. And then where you just get the managed response, that runs about $52,000 a year. If the cyber insurance makes the adjustment here in Wisconsin, my guess it would be that lower tier that they would be insisting that we implement. But that may never come to pass and whatnot. But I wanted you to be aware of that is something that we are not providing. We do not have 0-day immediate protection from malware and viruses based on our current solution. Budget notes. I'm going to ask you to send those around. I have my budget complete, but I have to go over it with my team to make sure I didn't miss something and for them to find the things where I guessed wrong and whatnot, and then we'll be presenting it by Paul's deadline on the 25th. And then we'll be going over it piece by piece with Exec Finance. When it is complete and I'm submitting it, I can email it to all of you if you want to give it a thorough review. This document I'm passing around is basically just a highlight of what you need to be aware of, or at least what I think you need to be aware of. We are not requesting any system components for replacement in this year's budget. The $500,000 you approved a few years ago, we should be good till 2027 on that. I will be updating the 5-year plan and submitting that to you sometime when I get some time next year. Desktop components, that's PCs, laptops, tablets, and whatnot. I'm putting in the budget for replacing 15 systems next year. The breakdown below, desktops over 5 years old, some of those were purchased with grant money and will probably be replaced with grant money. And for the most part on desktops, you run them till they die. They tend to be pretty robust. Laptops, on the other hand, once they get over 5 years old, we start to see breakdowns and repairs. So we start to consider replacement for those. Currently, 25% of laptops are over 5 years old. We have money in the budget this year to replace some of those. I've been holding on to those funds and dribbling them out as we needed for replacements, and then we'll be picking out the ones that are scheduled to repair sometime in November. I'm guessing 15 should do it again. I wanted you to be aware that number 3 to 4 years old laptops, 34% of our entire laptop collection is that age. So it might come to be a big ask 2 years from now that it's time to replace those. Also, the age of all the squad laptops, those are the premium laptops, the ruggedized ones. They tend to go about $2,200 a piece minimum. Those are all 4 years old in 2024.
Is there grant money out there for those?
We try to wait and see for grant money. The idea is to replace a third of the fleet every year, and then you mitigate. But with grants out there, that doesn't work. So we kind of are. We're going to have. I'll talk to Wayne. He's really good at keeping an eye on that stuff in the sheriff's office, and have him looking out. I would recommend that starting in 24, he start looking for grants, because they're going to start to fail, particularly since those things run constantly in conditions that aren't office ready. So we'll keep an eye on that. Access points for the existing courthouse. We did purchase enough access points for the new facility and for the old facility, but then when the jail construction was going on, we started to see how partitioned it really was, and that we weren't going to be able to get away with cutting that many access points out of that design. And I did not want any connectivity issues for jail staff when they're in those spaces. They're going to be using that to track all the different things they do as they move through the facility. So they need 100% connectivity, pretty much that entire facility. So we added back in a dozen access points that I had yanked out of the original proposal. And now I have to come up with those now that the work's going to be done on this space. We added those back in. So I'm putting that in the budget next year. New facility equipment. Wiring for antennas and boosters that I'm putting in $2,000 to connect those free AT&T boosters for the sheriff's office. Additional connections to new and old spaces. We think we're going to need at least one fiber run that we're going to have to pay for between this building and the new building. We're hoping that the second fiber run will be covered as part of the new building cost, because I thought that was included, but don't know now. So we're putting money in the budget to cover that. Connecting systems, again, that would be things like connecting the PA system, connecting the panic button solution. I'm setting aside a small amount of money just in case. I don't know. Conference room elements, we removed about $200,000 from the proposal for the new building, eliminating equipment we felt was redundant, but it does come at a cost in that I'm going to have to purchase a few of these items to place in those spaces, and about $9,000 worth of PCs and owls to make those spaces conference ready. And then we'll have a consistent experience from room to room, old and new facility. So no matter where your meeting is, you'll know how to connect. Replacement routers, we have 4 outline routers at the highway that are expired the end of this year. We'll need to replace those. Remodel office furniture, shelving and whiteboards for our new space. I threw some money in for that without really knowing if we're going to need it, because I don't know what is going to be available. I imagine once people start vacating the space and moving, it's going to be like a free-for-all, people slapping tags on shelving and tables and chairs and whatnot, and all of us who are staying in the old building are going to be grabbing what we can get. So I don't know how I'm going to do in the free-for-all, so I thought I'd put some money in the budget for that. Replacement of analog cameras. We have some analog cameras in this space that will need to connect to the new system. I'm not putting that in my budget because I don't know. I can't even give you an estimate at this point. And I feel like that should probably be considered as a cost of the remodel of this building. Removal of cabling and wires, I've already covered that as to my feelings on that. I don't know what the cost is going to be to move the ADRC into this building, which I expect to happen once the remodel is complete. That would probably be one of the first phases, wouldn't it?
No, because you gotta get,
Got to get the courtrooms done first.
Land management needs to move first, and then that space needs to get remodeled for ADRC.
Yeah, so it might be 2025 before ADRC moves over here. But I don't know what cost would be associated with that, so I'm not including it. Microsoft licensing has previously specified when we told department heads that if they keep a smartphone in their department, that we, in order for HIPAA and CJIS compliance, it has to have a middleware on it that we can monitor it, shut it down, lock it up, do what we need to do in case somebody loses it. We currently have Intune on all your devices. We recommended that the $30 a year cost of Intune be applied to every single smartphone that the county currently has. I do not have that in my budget for next year. Because now that we've winnowed out, I believe we've eliminated close to 50 smartphones and hotspots here at the county, which met our goal to fund the phone solution. I think what we're going to experience is in the coming months, some of them that got rid of their phones are realizing, oh, this isn't going to work because this person needs it for this. So we might have a couple come back. We might eliminate a few more. It's going to be an ongoing winnowing process, but we're already saving the money. I'm not sure it might be too late in the game for me to say, don't forget to include your $30 per smartphone fee in next year's budget. I don't have room in my budget to include it this year, so I'm just letting you know that even though we said that was going to be policy, I don't know that I can include that in my budget this year for 2024. Just so you're aware of that, we would not be in compliance in that, but we haven't been in compliance for years.
Under the unknowns, did you kind of jump over, or was I asleep? Zoom to highway,
Oh, yeah, I did jump over that. We haven't discussed that with Neil yet. He has a phone system through TCC. I think they're happy with it. It's just that every time we transfer a call to highway from our phone system, that's an extra charge that's not included. I'm just like, I'd really like them all in the same system. It's hosted, it works. It just seems like it'd be, let's put them all on the same system out there and get it over with. I don't think we have time to consider that in 2024, but I just want you to be aware of it. If it comes to pass, I don't think it would be, again, the cost would be offset by what they're paying for their existing solution, so no big deal. Microsoft licensing, the upgrade to staff to Office 365. Currently, the Office suite that's deployed throughout the facility is Office 2013, and it's starting to fail. They're not patching it. The security patches aren't happening to it. People who are trying to open up their Outlook, it fails. It doesn't link to their Office 365 account. This is Microsoft's way of saying time for you to move on. I don't have a final quote for replacing the Office suite. You can buy Office Standard Suite perpetual license that would probably be good for 10 years before Microsoft does the same trick or make it so it doesn't work with their solution. Once I have that number, I will present it to the Budget Committee. I probably will need to email this committee because there might be a decision. Because the cost to upgrade all the Office 365 licenses, currently department heads and anyone that needs the full Office Modern Suite and the legal hold has what's called a G3 license, and it includes everything you need to be a functional Microsoft citizen, and it's about $220 a year, the subscription. And this is what most public agencies have for all their staff and their electeds. I don't know where they find the money. What we've done is we've taken the G1 license, which is a much lower tier, that only includes the online version of Office, and then you have to buy an additional security piece for the encryption and some of the tools that you need to function, and that costs about $97 a year. So if you do the math, it's about $125 per person, and we got 180 people that would have to get upgraded. So I'd be paying around $22,000 a year to upgrade them to a G3 versus a one-time purchase of around $36,000. So what I'm leaning towards recommending, again, I have to work this out with staff, is that we seek a grant to pay up front for the Office suite. And in the interim, as people fail to connect to their Outlook, we're going to have to migrate them to working online. which creates a training and personnel issue. There are going to be some users that are just going to be very unhappy. If you've used Outlook all your life at work and you're used to creating your appointments and doing your emails through that, telling them you have to go to a portal and click on it and open it up and it looks and feels different, that can create some consternation, but I don't feel like we have a choice. I can't ask for $36,000 in the budget this year or the additional $22,000. So I wanted you to be aware that that is hanging out there, and if I change my mind, I'll let you know that we are going to ask for this, but at this point, I just don't think I can squeeze it in. As of right now, I have some things to work through. In the budget, what did I put for that? Yeah, I'm not including that Vesta system I spoke of. The Baycom is taking over support for that. It's hardware provided by Motorola, running Brightspeed data across it with Lumen supporting it. And Lumen will no longer be supporting it. I can't call Motorola directly to get support on this product. It's just mind-boggling. So Baycom has provided a quote, and it's going to jump from $17,000 to $25,000 next year. But I don't think I included it in my budget because I'm hoping that we can get the grant, and then we won't be paying that support. We'll be paying a different support. So I'll let you know if that gets where it's at. But as of right now, looking at a slight reduction in my overall budget, but it's taking some, I've gotten lucky. The primary one being that printing is dropping, it looks like it's going to drop a minimum of $20,000 per year for our print services agreement. That's being accomplished by making people suffer. We are moving from 84 print devices down to 40. Departments have been worked with on this, but I think some of them don't realize how many people are going to have to get up and go walk to get their printouts and whatnot. But so far, again, because we don't know, people aren't in their new spaces yet. Our backup plan is we do own a number of these small black and white 30-page a minute printers. They're very efficient laser printers, and we have about 15 of them. So if somebody says we have to have a printer in this space because we got citizens coming up or whatever, we'll just roll one of those out and I'll just replace the toner on my own. We won't put it under the services contract. We also have a guy we've contracted with who's going to help us write the RFP, and he thinks he can shave quite a bit off that number in addition to that savings I'm already promising. He approved his services earlier this year. And then the last thing would be faxing. I'm going to be taking that under my budget unless you recommend otherwise. We're eliminating the fax lines through the current system. The committee has made a recommendation they would like your authorization on. It's called MFax. It's a hosted solution. The cost for that I anticipate, we're going to pay month to month until we figure out exactly what we have for volume, and then make an annual payment. But an annual payment basis, it would be $185 a month for all 15 lines that the county is going to have. And that includes 50 users, so every department would have ample access for their staff to go online and send and receive faxes, and it meets all the HIPAA and CJIS requirements. So then once that's done, then I'll be reaching out to Five Star Telecom, and we're going to eliminate the SIP that comes into the building and get that contract done with. So I think that's it. Any questions?
Not for Monday morning, Jim.
I got two questions.
Go ahead.
First, on the Vesta panel replacement, I don't believe I heard a number of the cost of the grant we're going after and how much it would cost if we don't get the grant.
That is under Wayne's bailiwick in the sheriff's office. I provide technical advisement on that particular, but I'm not in charge of that. I believe the quote they got was $268,000, and of which we would be required to pick up 10 or 20%, but I am not the source.
Oh, so it's not your typical 50-50 split on the grant?
No, they really want to move people to this next gen 911. And it also involves replacing the trunking that we have going in. AT&T offers a product called EZNet, so we'd no longer be going through Brightspeed, who are trying to get out of that business anyway. Although there's some things we have to get a handle on as to what exactly is involved with bringing in new 911 trunks into the building. Because again, they currently come in through a handhole on the south side of the property and it's divided into multiple closets in the basement over there, and then it goes up into the new space on the first floor. I don't think anybody could track that spaghetti. So it'll be really nice if the trunks come into the new data center over there and then it's done. It's going to be a big lift for us for maintainability.
Thank you. Question 2 was, on your budget, thank you for all the work you do, Tim. I know you're really trying to squeeze and look at alternatives. But on your budget, what you're saying here is for the replacement of, say, the laptops. You're kind of anticipating that kind of a fail rate, so it's dying and then you replace. It's dying, then you replace, rather than just, well, we're going to go ahead and replace and they're not dead yet. I'm assuming that's the direction you're going.
Yeah, we replace as they die or as they start to not be effective for the individual. So if they're having problems where this isn't fast enough to meet the needs, then we swap.
Right. So just as an example, on the desktop component replacement, $18,750, are you saying that you're anticipating I'm actually going to have to spend that $18,750 because that's actually what we're going to fail and have to replace? Or are you saying, well, I'm going to kind of budget for that, and then at the end of the year, I might have some money back?
Yeah, that's how we do it. About 2/3 of the ones we replace are because of fail. Okay. And then about 1/3 of the ones we replace it's getting old, it's not effective, they're struggling to get connected, blah, 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 stuff like that. So it still works, but it's not working well enough for the person to be productive.
Good, because being on the Executive Finance Committee as well, my rather is that we budget to the minimum, and if you have to come back to the board and the committee for more money from the general fund, then let's do that, because we end up having inflated budgets, and then we really have to decide as a committee, well, where are we going to cut back? And it's very hard to do. So I appreciate you doing the minimalistic approach, because it's as transparent as it gets, and it helps us make a decision in the long run.
Yeah, and then part of the problem is that during COVID, we brought so much equipment, so many more laptops into the organization before we were a desktop shop. So you tended to, those desktops could go and go forever. And once you switch to laptops, that year-over-year cost, and I just don't want to get pantsed where all of a sudden we got a whole bunch of laptops failing and we can't. Now with the sheriff's department, we do proactive removals on those.
If we can switch back to desktop instead of laptop, then let's do that too.
It's too late. The mobility feature has really been a boon to productivity.
I understand.
Yeah, the fact that people can work remotely, work from home, and we do have a lot of personnel that move around quite a bit. So it has been, and it works really well with the new phone system too, so that they can make calls wherever they are as well, and meetings. Yeah. I never bring my laptop to a meeting, but.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anything else for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Jeremy.
Y'all want to go and stretch your legs first?
You got a long
This is going to take a while?
Well, I got budget stuff too, so.
I'm good. Let's roll.
Yeah, the quicker we start, the quicker we finish.
Amen.
All right, so I'll just start with the recap pretty much of this last month. Nothing too crazy or extreme again. Thankfully, it was a decent month. Still on schedule to have the gravel parking lot paved at the end of this month through the highway department, so that'll be beneficial for us come winter. Still on schedule to have a portion of this building rekeyed so that it matches the existing building when they open up, and the portion of this building, again, it's just the exterior perimeter doors and a couple of the hallway doors, because we're still up in the air on what other doors are going to be removed, changed, remodeled during the remodel process. So I just did the bare minimum over here to make it easier for the fire department in case of an emergency, so they're not pulling 6 keys out of a lockbox to try to figure out which key does what, so that they are not unnecessarily using their tools to rip my doors off, because that's something that they're usually quite excited about, is using their jaws of life to cut a door off if they can. The new generator was commissioned last week, and so everything, as far as I understand it, was good on that one. I did have to end up dropping 1,100 gallons of diesel fuel into that. So that was, I already kind of built that into my budget for this year, a little over $4 a gallon though, because I did wait and bought the, can't remember what it is. It's the winterized diesel fuel, just because then I don't have to worry about it gelling up on me in the winter. That's just what I'm going to keep in there all the time.
You say new generator commission, what do you mean?
I mean, they fired it up. They made sure that it worked. They put a load test on it. They ran it for, I think, 2 days at 8 hours a day just to make sure that it was doing exactly as it should do. Now, I believe in October, I don't think a date has been set 100% yet, though, but they will be removing the current generator that services this building. That's a project that involves a few other departments, because at that point, we're having to cut power to this building. So 911, the jail, IT will all be affected when that happens. But there isn't a solid date that I know of yet. It was just a talk at the last meeting, so sometime in October. When they pull the generator, they're also going to pull one of the transformers that's out back that feeds this building, and then the current LP tank that feeds this building. And then a gas line will run from the new LP tank to this building for redundant backup for my boilers here. But that'll lower the footprint that I have on the back side of the building where my chillers are, so it'll be a smaller fence, something that they were alluding to earlier with the Samuels group, with the type of fencing that we're putting up, because I've been working with them to try to lower the costs on that from the approved vinyl type plastic fencing, which was an outrageous cost, to either more of a cedar or even green treated lumber if I need to. Also last week, I rode around the county with insurance property assessment, which Rick had brought up last month. So we went to Peatrick Park. I brought him to like the evidence shed, gave him the information on the radio towers that we take care of. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm pretty sure our insurance rates are going to go up, obviously. So just so you guys are aware, because all the information they had on the radio towers was like 15 years old, so they had none of the right addresses. The evidence shed was not included on part of their property list. And then when this new building gets added, which they'll have to come back next year because they didn't want to walk through that until that building is 100% ours.
Jeremy, on that property shed, isn't that owned by the healthcare center, and don't they already have insurance on it?
That's ours.
It's
on the healthcare center's property, but it's the sheriff's department that built that, and then my department that maintains that. But it wasn't even listed on the healthcare center's property sheet either, because I got a copy of everything that they went through.
Jeremy, I got a question too. Go back up. Excuse me. What happened to the old generator? Who got it? Did you sell it?
I did not. No, I'm working to see if Fabric Cat maybe wants it. Other than that, it's going to become the property of the county. Once it gets removed up to the front, then I'll have a choice in what to do with it. But Fabric, the last I talked to them, they don't want it because
it was still a working generator, though. It was still working, wasn't it?
It works. You have to baby it every week. Like I said, I burn through anywhere between 1 to 2 quarts a week, and it only runs for 30 minutes a week.
Maybe you could sell it to some farmer.
I can sell it. Whether it gets sold for scrap or whether I sell it back to Fabric or whatever, I'll have a profit at some point this year when it comes to that. But they're going to crane it out and put it out into the front for me, and then whether I put it up on the Wisconsin Surplus website or whatever it is, that will be built into that cost. It's here, you want it, here's the price, but you are responsible for taking it from point A to wherever.
Okay.
So when that point comes, that'll be October, November when we do that. That we'll get that squared away. I have things that have been ordered for the new building, a few new tool benches. I got all the paper towel dispensers and whatnot that the contractors over there will be putting into the bathrooms when they get to that point of the building. You'll see kind of where the progress is. I don't know exactly when the last time most of you have been through there. I know Audie's been through there a couple of times, but there's quite a few new things over there that this building doesn't have, and the progress is really ramping up now that they're painting floors, all that stuff has already been done in quite a bit of that building. Have a new position that ad has been run so far. I've got 9 applications for that position. I believe it closes this week, and then Karen from HR is on vacation the following week, and then we're going to do interviews. I believe it'll be the week after that. So I'm hoping to have this position filled in place by mid-September, second to third week of September, and that's about what I budgeted for anyway. I'll have a little extra money on that one.
This new position is because of the additional work.
Correct. Yeah, it's an added position to my department. So it's one that didn't exist before, but it's because we're going from 84,000 square feet to 199,000 square feet just on this particular property. So we did do some work at one of the radio towers this month. The generator at the Blair radio tower failed, so we did work with emergency management to go up there and get the repairs done on that one. I did order the man lift that was approved on my budget for last year that carried over to this year. And you'll see why when you go through the building next year, when you go through the main center of the jail. It's 26 feet from the floor to the ceilings that are in the middle there. So there's a lift that we purchased for that. As well, it will be needed to be used in the courtrooms as needed because their ceilings are high and vaulted as well for changing lights, doing repairs on anything up there. And then the only other issue we've had is kind of prevalent. It's just more and more water leaks in the jail, so I'm really counting down the days until that jail I can shut down the water, because the parts that are failing, they're not cheap parts. They're Acorn parts, which means they're correctional approved metering devices that go on so that when they push the button, the water only goes for so long or it mixes, but they're like $400 a piece. Even when I buy them in just parts and pieces, $400 is the smallest one. If I buy the whole panel that it consists of, it's like $1,200. So now when one part breaks, I'm just either trying to buy rebuild kits, so I'm not stuck with a bunch of stuff when we move, because the parts they don't carry over into the new facility. So I got nothing else for this month that was crazy or outside the norm. If anyone has any basic questions on that. No?
Thank you.
So with my budget, though, I am gonna preface by saying that this is mostly a best guess on a lot of this stuff. I took a lot of the current bills that I had, went over the past 12 months, divided them out, tried to find a range of what I'm looking for this building, taking into account the amount of extra square footage that we're adding, even with the energy efficient models that are being added over there. But for instance, the water for the jail runs right now about $700 a month for their water bill, but I only have 28 inmates. So then trying to figure out, the jail's anticipating that they'll be fully filled over there with 70 plus inmates come March. So trying to figure that stuff out. So I'll just start basically here on page 1 with salaries at $258,918. That's by going by the predetermined steps that the Human Services has set out, with the addition of the new position that's added for my department. So as you can see, for this year, we're at $207,000 projected and going to $258,000 for the next year. That's adding $50,000 for that new position there as it sits. Next page, there's not a lot of those are predetermined prices set up for healthcare, taxes and stuff like that, and those are all pre-generated or automatically generated numbers from the spreadsheet when I fill out. And again, they're just adjusted up because of inflation and because I'm adding a new staff member. Next page is where you're going to see the significant changes. So in line 220, utilities, currently projected for this year and budgeted is $150,000. You see in 2022, I spent $145,000 on those, and I'm requesting $300,000. Again, my utilities for that is my electric and my water, but that's taking into account the rate of increase on the electric and the water utilities, plus the amount that we're actively using more. Because even when you go through the new building, we're adding 3 new boilers, ice makers, walk-in freezers, coolers, fire sprinkler systems that have a lot of electric components that go with them, plus the additional water that's inside of that sprinkler system that I do have to have. I have to have those risers drained yearly when they do the tests on that system there. So there's quite a bit of extra piping that goes through the building on that. Adding 2 new elevators, new chiller system. So the electric rate is like I said, I anticipate a double at that point, but again, I'll keep an eye on it through the year. I'm going to have a more accurate representation of what that stuff is going to be for the following year's budget, because I'll have something to base it on. Because right now, I won't get a first bill for this building until December, and it won't even be fully staffed at that point. So I'll have no idea on what the actual bills are going to be. Next one at 221 is for gas, heating, and fuel. So that's the natural gas that I'm looking to put in for the 4 new water heaters that are over there, the 3 new boilers, plus the diesel fuel expense, which hopefully diesel fuel shouldn't be a large expense, 1,100 gallons in that tank, and I'm anticipating we won't be running that generator more than, the 30 to 45 minutes a week as it's needed. Other than that, we're having a problem in town, and I don't like to foresee that. I hope we're not running off that generator more than we need to. 225 telephone is down. 540 is what was projected with the changes in the phone system. I only spent 166 the previous year. I put it to 250 going by the number that I got from Tim doing the multiplications for that. So it should be just shy of that. Trash at 228, increasing from 5,500 to 10,000. One, I am adding another dumpster to the outside of the jail. So I don't anticipate any more pickups other than 2 dumpsters a week versus 1. Again, I can't really tell until I know how much garbage that kitchen is going to be producing, because now they're also cooking in-house for 70 some odd inmates, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week over there.
Yeah, but 70, I don't think you're going to hit that for quite a while.
They're, again, talking to Joan, they are anticipating March, whether it is 100% Trempealeau County inmates that are in there, or if they are leasing some of the space of the jail to other people. The trash, the electric, the water, makes no difference where they live. It's still hitting my department if they've got 70 people in that jail. Snow, I'm not doing a large increase in snow, just rounding it up from 10,925 to 11,000. Then I already have the equipment. I'm just going to end up probably buying some more salt. Not a big change in that one there. Vendors, I'm going from 55 to 80. Again, I'm not anticipating a huge amount of issues this first year. Well, I am, but I'm not. So everything's going to break that first year. Something's always going to break, but a lot of it is going to be covered under warranty, with the exception of labor, under most of these things that I've seen. There's some of them that are covered with parts and labor, some of them that are only covered in parts. So I'm just kind of building for just in case on that one there. 310 office supplies stays the same. Small items of equipment going from 25 to 3,000, a small jump there, but I know I'm going to end up buying a few more hand tools because of the additional staff and additional square footage over there. 319 shredding from 36 to 3,800. Again, that's just for the cost, the fuel charge that I get from them, and then the increase in service cost. 325 education's going from 1,000 to 1,500, and that's as I have 3 new certification classes for myself and the members of my staff next year when it comes to fire prevention, alarm, sprinklers, and emergency power certifications for this new building. So that $1,500 will cover the cost of certification for my staff for those. 327 inspections from 10,000 to 17,000. I'm again adding 3 new boilers, chiller systems, fire sprinkler systems, elevators that all need annual inspections on them, so the cost of that is going up. No changes in meals, no changes in lodging. 339, there's no changes other than just changing the name. It was for mileage for personal vehicles, now it's just for fuel and parts for the truck that's in my department. Supplies from 55,000 to 100,000, and that, again, that covers everything from toilet paper, trash bags, chemicals, laundry detergent, anything that's not office supplies for the department is what I buy. So if you go into the restrooms, any of that stuff. So I'm doubling the amount of bathrooms. Everything else just needs to get purchased and stored here. Security services, this one will be from 13 to 15, and that's for the repairs that I do on any of the camera systems, the x-ray equipment, the body scanner that's in the jail. Impound shed, there's no change. And jail repairs, I'm dropping from 15 to 10. Again, just because I'm not going to be doing a lot of repairs, obviously, in the existing facility, but there are going to be some things that are going to end up happening over in this other one. But I have nothing to base that on other than my best guess at that point. Next page, it just shows the total. And so my total budget, it's roughly a 50% increase from the previous year. Again, there's not much I can do about that. It's just covering the costs of what's been handed additionally to my department. Expenses, it's a 75% increase in expenses and a 25% increase in salaries at that point. But overall, it's a 49.6% increase to my budget at that point. Now I do have, I think I stapled some of them to your, maybe I didn't. I do have some, that'll be project requests that'll go through exec finance when I get to them. I don't know if I stapled them onto those copies or not. One of them is just for some extra, there'll be floor mats that go into the entrance of the building. You'll see a couple of them here when you walk in, and they're just runners and whatnot. These ones here would be larger mats for the new entrance area. They'll have our logo for Trempealeau County embroidered into the mats. One outside of the courtroom areas, one outside of the clerk of court areas. It's a $4,000 ask at that point. That I'll have more detail and pictures when it gets to exec finance at that point, so they're aware of what I'm looking at. Another one is a $7,500 ask to add more exterior picnic tables and exterior trash cans to the building. We're going to have a courtyard that's meant to be determined to have lunch seating areas and stuff. Right now I have 2 wooden picnic tables that I know most people have already gotten. We try to sand them, paint and or stain them every year, but I'm still getting slivers. Stuff like that. They're warping because we don't take them completely apart. So this cost is for the plastic coated type picnic tables. And then surprisingly enough, those exterior garbage cans, when you're looking at commercial grades, are not very cheap either. And some of these, one of them would have a smoke station built into the top. I'm not trying to encourage smoking in the new quad area, so I'll have a couple of smoke stations on the outside of the building that are, right now there's some near the front door and some near the quick trip side, so we're going to have to move those because those are not going to be exits that are going to be currently used at that point in time. And the last one that I'm looking at is one that's kind of up in the air, some stuff that Tim alluded to. It's construction projects. There's quite a few things here that when Tim's department moves into the current clerk of courts area. So the remodel portion is where I'm in a gray area on what some of this stuff, because no one can give me an answer, and the bids haven't been put out and I haven't got prices back on them. But if Tim's department moves into a big open area like this, well, he wants cubicle walls or half walls built in that department. That may or may not be included, but I do not think this stuff is included in the remodel. It would be moving his department where it needs to go. Human Services also has an ask of part of their admin area, and the current area where IT is going to become economic support. And so they need, again, half walls, cubicle walls built in over there, which is not part of the remodel process. So there's
Why isn't it part of the remodel process? Didn't that go through
And
the ask? And
I have asked, but I've never gotten an answer. So it's the same with the other areas on this here that Tim had brought up. The PA system, the alarm system, the badging system, the camera system, none of that was addressed to get tied into the new building. And so as it sits right now, if Tim's department, the current badges that we have, the badges will work in the new building. But there's 2 systems for me to maintain at that. So I have to pull up 2 separate software programs to see every one of Tim's badge strikes. All the ones in this building and all the ones in that building. And if I need to give a badge control over both buildings, I need them to be one entity.
I'm sorry, I get all of the common elements that everybody benefits from. I was specifically related to if the health department needs half walls, that should have been included with,
The health department, it's building cubicles, or building rooms in the north courtroom. It is, and then south courtroom. But now I've specifically asked for this, and whether it's in the bids or not, it hasn't been approved yet. So
I understand. So let's just make sure that whenever we get the final plans that, they have it all in there. I mean, Samuel's group should know all of those things. And
Yep.
I encourage you to have a conversation with Samuel's group and make sure that all of that stuff is covered. Because I don't want you to have to come back and ask for.
Well, and in all honesty, when I bring this to exec finance, I anticipate this to be the one that is going to be kicked back, because there's so many things on here that are unanswerable at the moment. Tim's wiring closet, if that gets approved in the new space where he's going, is the remodel. If we ask for that too, I need a mini split unit put into that. But I need confirmation on that, and that's the biggest problem that I've had, maybe Tim's had over the past 18 months on all this. I'll ask, but I never get an answer. Or like Mike had the issue before, they do change the layout of the bathroom, but it's not shown all the time. Now he, for the area that Mike had an issue with up in the south courtroom, I'm asking the appropriate people, but then I just get kicked back or I get pushed to another department. So some of the same issues that Tim has, and that's what I spoke to Kurt when he was leaving. I have no answer on who's paying for this stuff. Whether it's they're building it into the bid, they say yes. But I have no proof of that anywhere. And that's the problem that I'm having. And all of this stuff is stuff that I've asked, that I brought up, that I've walked with them. Adding another exhaust system to this particular basement when they remodel a portion of this building, because I need one for the sewage storage tank that's down here in the basement. I need an exhaust system added to that room when they do this, because it's not up to code the way it is. Right now, it is exhausted through the air handler that runs this basement. That's not how it should be done. Adding monitored alarms to the perimeter doors in this building. Now, I have a price to put alarms on them so they'll be audible when they go. If someone tries to use that door, an alarm will go off in that place. But I need dispatch to know it in that new building. I need that part of the fire alarm system. I've asked, but I haven't gotten an answer. I need to, the lighting system for the new building, the exterior lighting. I have 3 different systems for this building. I need them tied into that building so every light comes on at the same time. Right now, the north side of the building comes on because it's on a photo cell. The south side of the building comes on at a different time because it's on a timer. Then the front door lights, the pillar lights come on at a different time because they're not synced with the other timer. I've asked for them to get built into the new lighting panel in the new building. Still haven't gotten an answer if that's gonna happen. Plus I need to add exterior lights to that front side of the building to go along with it, since the only light out there right now is like the flagpole light, and those flagpoles are gonna be coming down. Half wall, stuff like that. And then I need to decommission the system that's in the current jail, the control system that controls the doors. I need to shut down the water that goes to every one of those, because register of deeds is staying where they are. If I have no need for the water above them, I would like to take that out, because we've had issues before where those pipes leak into the register of deeds. If we are putting UW extension in the sheriff's department, I would like to get rid of all the water above their heads, just because it makes sense. So I need to build in the cost for that. Is that going to be included? I don't think so, because they're not touching that jail over there. If we're going to be using that jail as a storage area, I need to change out 4 of the jail doors with regular doors so that I could put a key in them, or because I can't do that with the concrete filled steel doors that are over there right now. So there's quite a few things that I need to get done that I'm asking the appropriate people, but if I'm not getting an answer, I need to cover my own self to make sure that there's money here to get some of this stuff done as well.
Yeah, I just encourage you to be conservative on that, Jeremy, because none of this stuff is stuff that we wouldn't disagree probably should be done, but some of it doesn't have to be done now.
Well, and that is the other issue is
2 years from now, right?
Some of it is I have no idea what the timing is going to be for some of this stuff, because that timeline hasn't been projected because of the remodel project. It would have been nice to have an answer on what was happening with this building 6 months ago, so that I could build in for stuff like that. But
we're all trying. I'm just.
Yeah, and I'm not faulting. I'm not faulting you guys specifically on that.
That you know that the departments are going to need in order to move into that space. All the ancillary stuff that we really need to figure out how to get all this stuff done in due course. That's great, but we don't necessarily need to have that all in the budget.
No, but my main concern with it too is, or another concern that goes along with this is, if I get hit with these changes quickly, and then I need to come back and ask for money, I don't get the money quickly. I'd have to come to you to say what I need to do, and then depending on timing, next month go to exec finance, then the next week or 2 months after, or a month after that, go to the full county board to get the money.
That's the proverbial red tape that government has.
I get that.
And I would just suggest, hey, if there's an emergency situation, we can call an emergency meeting. We can get that taken care of if it's something that absolutely has to happen quickly. So please don't let that be a barrier to your looking at it to be in a conservative budget. Because at the end of the day, when we go back to the budget and we're going to say, where can we cut back? Well, nobody knows that we're going to spend an extra $400,000 on the new building. Well, let's cut that back. You're going to have to come back to the,
Agreed, and that's why I stated earlier, I 100% anticipate that particular project, when I bring it up, will be the one that will not be pushed through, but I still need to bring it up. And what it needs and what it's funded.
Exactly what I would expect you to do. Thank you. I hope we can get you all the things you need. It's that balancing act between the timing.
Well, and I understand that exec finance, it is going to be another difficult year when it comes to that, because you're going to have to build in stuff that's built in there that you have no money for. And that one ask on this is everyone try to cut your budget by 1%. Maybe Tim succeeded in that. But I increased mine by 49%. Nothing I can do about that, though. You can cut it. Exec finance can cut it like they did last year, which is fine. And I have to come back again later to ask for the funds to cover my line item for electricity or water. That's 100% doable. But that's why I'm just presenting to you what I'm going to be giving to them, and then they'll make their choice from there.
I think if you have a list of things that you presented this morning, many of these things you do need an answer on. Some things, I think, as David is suggesting, maybe can be dealt with a little later, but things that need to be done now, if you don't get an answer, I would encourage you to be available at the meeting when we discuss this with Kurt, when he comes up with a figure, and make sure that
I'll be here. Yeah, and every one of those. And to Tim's point earlier, there's funds that are going to need to be, if dispatch doesn't move, if I'm not looking to spend the funds to connect this building to that building, but if dispatch doesn't move, then there's going to need to be funds that are found to connect that building to this building, while dispatch is still over here. Because whether in either building they need to see the camera systems for both buildings. They need the PA system to announce to both buildings. They need to be able to see if a fire alarm happens in that building over here. So one way or the other, whether it's part of the remodel, but that stuff is more, if we open to the public January 1st, that stuff needs to be addressed before January 1st, if that makes sense, because I can't have dispatch here and not know what's going on over there. And if that becomes the new front door of the building, you have that little PA system at the front door where after hours people come to push a button. I need that to go to dispatch over here in this building. So that's the PA, the fire alarm, the stuff that he's brought up is the stuff that I brought up that I just need an answer from
But all I'm
Samuel's
saying,
group.
all I'm saying, because I think we're talking about almost two different things. What I'm saying is that things that you anticipate we definitely need to be built into the budget for the remodel, we want to make sure that you have that list available so that you confront Kurt with it and make sure that that is included. So that we know where that funding is coming from.
Yep, and
If he
I'll
has
have
to-
that list, and I do have an email trail of me emailing the appropriate people with Samuel's group or IMEG too, with these questions starting a while ago.
Sounds
But-
good.
But I think what you're saying is, at the end of the day, whenever we get Samuel's group coming back and say, here's our bid, here's what it's gonna cost, I want you to be sitting here going, okay, does that include this? Does that include this? So that he's saying it, yes, it does, yes, well, no, we didn't include that, and then we have a discussion on it.
Yeah, and that's what I do bring up too, and I'll follow through on that one because I'll be here, it's at a property meeting, so I'll be here regardless, but we have our bi-weekly meetings across the trailer with them as well, and these are the ones that I bring up that I've asked to include, but that's again where the hitch comes back because no answers yet. And
Yeah, we expect more from him than that.
yeah, and I think Tim's got something to say too, I guess, but
We want to hear more.
Right, exactly.
May I address?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't even know what we don't know. Like, one of the questions is, how is the TV studio going to connect to its new mini TV studio? If you're planning to conduct meetings up there, there's really nothing in the remodel plans or in the new Justice Center plans that talk about how those two spaces are connecting, and whether it's even necessary. There's a great deal of unknowns flying around here. But what I'm wondering is that some things are required for the minimal function of the building, and if they aren't in place come December 1st or January 1st, what is the plan? Should there not be a working alarm system between the two buildings? Do you move forward with migrating people over into a space that doesn't meet the minimal requirements? Just putting it out there. The reason I think why I'm bringing it all up there's a budget aspect to it, but I need you to be aware of how many balls we have in the air that we have no idea where they're coming down. And so we're trying to get the dialogue started, because I think the more that you are involved in this process, the quicker the decisions will happen when they come on the fly. We can't go to the model of, it happens this month, we report it, then it goes to another committee the next month, and the 3 months later it gets solved. There's going to need to be some quick action, and this is the committee that I think is going to have to be on top of those things.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that, Chair. I mean, I think what we need is a list of those, hey, we can't operate this building unless this, and this is done. I haven't seen that list for us to say, okay, well, here, let's get it done. So I'm willing to approve a list if we have a specific list that the state fire marshal's not going to let us occupy this building unless this is done. We'd love to make those decisions, but I haven't seen a list.
Yeah, I am surprised at all the conversations we have that a lot of this stuff was not discussed 3 years ago.
It was.
But why wasn't? I mean, to me,
Why wasn't it in the contract? Why wasn't it-
Yes, Kurt told me this morning when he said in the original bid of the new building, there's no money into making the connection, just to cut a hole. No door, nothing, no flooring. I mean, you're connecting the building. You're going to have to get between them. That should have been in the plan.
In Kurt's defense,
this work with that building should have been in the plan.
It was
Why did they drop
part of
it?
their planning initially, because they needed X amount of funds for the new Justice Center, and they had excess set aside for the remodel of the old space. And the presumption of both the elected officials and Samuel's group was that would remain as such, and they would plan them together accordingly. So all the connections and functionality of various systems would have been built right into it, because it's really one project. project. But once the funds got eliminated, which was fairly quick in the process, Jeremy, myself, and the property committee for 2.5 years kept bringing these things up. But Samuel's group has to focus on finishing the job that they have money for, which is that building. And so this is why, we've been sounding this alarm for 2 years. It's just the thing, because of the nature of how the finances broke down, Samuel's group has basically said, we can't figure that out until funding is determined.
So Chair, I think we need our departments to give us that list so that we can make that decision, and let's knock it out. But that should be on the agenda for next month, and let's get it done.
And I can give you a list of everything that my department would need by next month. So then my question is, do you want me to give you just a list of what it needs, or do you want me to give you the list and how much it's going to cost for me to do it, or to have Samuels try to say, okay, but what is it going to be built into?
That may depend on whatever, but I'm suggesting the minimum equipment, the minimum construction list that we need in order to legally occupy the building is what we need. I mean, it's nice to be able to turn on the photo cells everywhere from one spot, Jeremy, but we don't have to have that to occupy the building, as an example.
Yeah, no, and that was on the bottom of my list of that.
What's the bare bone minimums we need to get into the building? Because then we can come up with another project at some point that says, okay, there's some really nice to have things that, boy, if we had the nice to have, we're going to spend a lot less money in the long run. I want to know those too, but that's not going to get us, we're not going to be able to get in the building and have all those things. So what's the minimum things that you guys say, if we don't have this, by golly, we're going to cause problems for our constituents? That's what I want to see.
And there's a departmental level to that as well. So we have Ashley with us here. I'm sure Ashley is concerned about the systems that are going to connect this courts in their new space. These are untried and untested, so they have certain things that need to work in order for them to move into their space. And I don't know how much advance work you're going to be allowed in there. I don't mean to speak for you, but that's just one example that comes to the top of my head, that there are departments moving into that new building that have certain parameters that have to be met in order for that to work as well.
And again, most of us weren't on the previous board that made all the decision that said all this stuff should have been put into the plan. So we're going blind here, guys. I mean, I hate to say this, you're complaining to people that don't know. We don't know what we don't know. So please make us aware of what that is so that we can make those decisions. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and keep in mind, from experience, these guys can come up with an exhaustive list that will not be complete, and we won't know what's not on the list till we're up and running. So we do the best we can from here, and we just have to have a plan on how to respond when those other issues pop up.
Well, I think Tim made the point, and you made the same point, that we don't know what we don't know. And maybe we need to be considering, due to that fact, and things are going to be popping up quickly, especially now with everything kind of coming to completion, then maybe we need to be meeting a little more frequently beginning in the fall. And Dan gives me that.
Well, I think I've heard myself say it more than once, that we need to be meeting more frequently for the duration of this construction project, but it hasn't happened yet. So maybe it should happen.
Well, I would think beginning, we're in August, I think beginning in September, we're talking about 3 months. And they're talking about being completed October, end of October he was talking about. So I think maybe beginning in the fall, Dan, we should be looking at meeting a little more frequently, even if the meeting lasts a half hour. If there are questions that come up or issues that we have to respond to, we need to respond to. The government doesn't always have to act slowly.
Would it be helpful? I think Dave brought up the point of having a list. Would it behoove you, if Jeremy puts a list together, I put a list together, we put our heads together, create a single list of all the issues, and then the issues that are immediate required for opening that space, issues that face us in the remodel of this space and all the moving around, and then perhaps there could be a weekly update emailed to all of you from Samuel's group and from the two of us saying where we're at on certain known issues.
That sounds like a great
And then
idea.
that way you can stay in the loop. And then maybe meet every couple weeks, like Dick suggests, as a.
Sammy's group, maybe if we present a list to them, they might get back to us more often than they do to you guys.
Part of what's getting convoluted here is you got the new building and all the nuances to getting it open. Then you've got all this remodel stuff that's going on, and then when you combine the whole thing, oh man, there's all this other stuff that we probably need to be thinking about too. So there's like 3 different buckets of stuff that how do you prioritize it? And we want to help prioritize it, but we don't have it in front of us that helps us get to that point sooner. And so I'm in agreement with having more meetings if we need to, but let's get a list and let's start prioritizing it.
And you don't want to put up a $40 million or $50 million building, and all of a sudden, next year you got to come back and you got to get this for $500,000.
Or heaven forbid, no, you can't occupy it.
Now, we don't want to spend money wildly, but you want to do the job right and get it done correctly, so you ain't doing patchwork for the next 5 years.
That's where I'm at, is trying to be as budget conscious as I can be. I hate putting 6 Band-Aids on the project to get me through, but if that's what we're going to have to do, then that's what we're going to have to do. But it makes more sense to do, the bulk of it up front. For instance, I'm just pulling this one out, the badging system. It's much easier to just tie everything in first than stretching it along to make it work. Or the fire alarm system. I'll give you the list. I'll work with Tim of the things, because again, if we take ownership and I'm just say November 1st or October 15th, whatever it may be, I need to know that if that building is being monitored when there's no one over there. Because right now, if the fire alarms go off in the middle of November at 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, there's no one there to let me know. There's nothing that triggers that, because we have dispatch on site to monitor that. We don't pay an outside company to monitor our alarms. If we have to do that for 6 months, pay Permar to monitor the alarm system, then so be it. But I'll give you the basic minimums that whether I need it or Whitehall FD needs it or whatever.
You're right.
But yeah, it's just, and now I'm stressing it more to you because it has been a 12, 18, 24 month question, and now we're down to 3 months. And it's like, still waiting on certain things. So yeah, it is.
It's fair, and so is your question on cost, right? Because, you maybe don't know the exact cost, but if you can give us a ballpark window, that will help us prioritize which ones we go after first, potentially. So we do need to have some sort of this is $1 million thing, or this is a $100 thing, to help us prioritize.
Well, we kind of set a date, or we hear Kurt set a date for us, maybe I should put it that way, that we're going to be in. And I think we have to remain flexible in terms of when we do move in. It may not be possible to be up and running the first of the year if all these unknowns that will come before us hit us.
There's even question as, okay, do we not allow any other departments to occupy the new building in the courthouse until the jail is operating, or can we operate some parts of that before the jail operates? I don't know. I mean, nobody's given any of that kind of a rundown of who's moving when.
We definitely shouldn't let get away with it.
That was a different committee.
That is what is being discussed at those department meetings of all the department heads that are moving over to the new building. That is what you've been discussing at those meetings. We don't have a finalized answer for you yet. That's what we're still working at.
But I don't
There's a lot of components that go with it.
But I don't think, right, but I don't think it's easy to set a final date, because it's going to be a matter of everything else fitting together and working. If you don't have all the proper connections, whatever they may be, you're not going to be able to move in.
Yeah, and my little bit is just one small little part of that. I mean, they have IT issues, and between in-house IT and what is the other one? CCAP, right? The state IT system. So they've got more balls to juggle too when it comes to other things and trying to figure out who's moving when, or if they can move half a department or the full department, or all the state people at once or whatever. So there's a lot of things that are.
Maybe we should have an update to this committee from what you guys are, thinking about, because we're all blind to what's really going on there unless I'm missing something.
Well, I think, as a committee, we need to maintain our vigilance because we're operating without all the information we need. This building is going to have issues that we need to consider that we won't have until after it's been bid and we've accepted a bid. We don't know when that's going to happen. I guess I'm going to ask everybody on the committee and in attendance and anybody that works in this building to try to resist the urge to panic and run screaming into the night. We will do business on a day-to-day basis. We just don't know how we're going to be able to do it yet. It is increasingly frustrating. We're elected to do the best we can for the taxpayer. And when we don't have the information, unforeseen circumstances, there's a lot of things that occurred in this process that we knew they were a possibility. We just hoped they wouldn't occur. Cost overruns, COVID. It's that lack of control that puts us into situations like this that we just have to make do. But until we get a bid and accept a bid on the restructuring of the existing facility, let's make do with the list we can identify, make decisions, because oddly enough, perceptions vary from person to person. And what Jeremy and Tim think are high priorities, I might disagree with. Dave might disagree with. But that's why we meet, and that's why we discuss things. We could stay here forever and not come to a decision.
Please not.
Yeah, we have other things on the agenda today. I would like us to proceed and move forward. We have given these two individuals a task. I'd like Ashley to work with the judge to give us a list of things that you need before you can move into the new facility, and we can spread the word through other departments that, as we deem them to be necessary.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment. Kurt's not his first time he's hooked to another building, other than we're going to have some remodeling.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty comfortable. He obviously knows that this can happen. I think he shouldn't have left here today. We need him here.
Yeah.
And he's told us from day one that this is going to happen. We've had similar questions, and so he's a big part of this. And I just think that until we get him sitting here with us, I think he's going to at least make us feel comfortable. And I don't know why he won't come to do what we need.
He's obviously a source of information that we can't ignore. You moved up to the table for a reason.
I was just going to let you know, if it helps, that department meeting, we're meeting once a month. And that's just kind of what we set for right now. If we need more meetings, we can. But at this point, we actually meet Wednesday this week. So we will meet one time before the next property committee meeting, because then we meet the Wednesday after the next property committee meeting. So we could update you with what we figured out, but there are a lot of components that go into moving over there. And this has to be done before this, but then this has to be done, and trying to get that timeline to all work out is very difficult, but we are working on it, and we've had some good discussions so far. Part of the problem is we can't finalize some of it until we get some answers from the Samuels Group, and they don't have them yet. Like, the connectivity is a huge answer that we've been waiting for before we can say, yes, let's do this, this, and this. Until we know when that is being put in, we can't give answers to it. So we'll hopefully have answers for you next time, but I can't guarantee that.
Well, I think that's true across the board. We'll take what we can get.
Yeah, and just having a standing agenda item to have an update at least monthly, and then maybe we have a special combined meeting, or whatever, between your group that's meeting and us to help you decide.
That's a good idea.
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah. Good. Moving forward. Anything else, Jeremy?
Any questions about my budget? Okay.
Now, traditionally, we accept the budget and forward it to exec finance. Is that not correct?
I mean, unless there's changes we want Jeremy to make.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, Jeremy's in a tough place. He doesn't know what he should or shouldn't. I mean, my whole thing is I'd rather us shoot low and come back to the well than shoot high and all of a sudden you got this budget that you're not going to spend, right? That's where I'd like to see it.
Yeah, and the only ones that I that are questionable to say if I overreached or not would be utilities and gas. But for that, what I did was, again, I just took a 12-month average of what I pay for this building and then pretty much multiplied that for the new space.
I get it. But even the garbage, I mean, you're kind of doubling the garbage. I mean, you don't know.
No,
Yeah. I'd like to think that we're not going to double it because we have the same amount of employees and all that. Now, granted, we're going to have more inmates potentially,
Possibly.
but we don't know how much garbage they're going to produce, right?
Correct. And then, and then I can get into that really big gray area is if the jail leases space to a different county or to the state. Does a percentage of that profit help to offset my utilities? But that's a whole other can of worms for another date.
I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, the bottom line of the county is the bottom line of the county, but you don't necessarily get a benefit to your budget because we're getting revenue.
And that's why I budgeted for 3 times the amount of staff going by the sheriff's department's assumption that they'll have that jail filled by March, April.
That's pretty optimistic in my mind.
But I had to build in for it at that point. So
And
it's
historically, the line items we're talking about, we have absolutely no control over. Objectively, you can set them wherever you want to set them. They're going to cost us what they're going to cost us.
Right.
We're not going to know until after the fact. Your statement going to the well, I mean, which makes me smile when we get all bent out of shape about budgeting because it's a crapshoot. Cut them in half. And then we go to the well when they're not going to come in at that
It's
level.
how do you want to manage it? That's
Yeah. Historically, and I don't always agree with it, the oversight committee, property is Jeremy's oversight committee, sign it off, send it to the exec finance for the heavy lifting, because that's the way it's been done in the past. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't necessarily have the time today to go through his budget and make the cuts that I think are necessary, but
No, and exec finance, they did that last year. When I presented certain numbers, when the budget came back later, it was cut back with the assumption that when and if I needed those funds at that point, I come back, which is a high probability come November that I will be coming back to exec finance to cover a portion of this year. But that's their prerogative, that's their right. So when I'm just presenting to you what I anticipate it should be, exec finance will make that determining factor in, October or whatever.
It's hard for me to sit here without my hat for executive finance. If I were to do that, I have no basis to say, Jeremy, looks horrible. We should cut this, but I don't have that here at this juncture. So it remains to be seen what the finance committee will do come budget time. And chances are many departments will not have the same budget that they submit in the end.
Yeah, and that's normal to me. But again, it was I made this committee aware, and exec finance even, that mine will be 50% higher. It is what it is, so it's.
Well, the thing is, the budget presented, the $100,000 for projects is the one that we would actually have some control over.
Yeah, and
Well, it's pretty open-ended, but I'd like to make a motion so we can move off this to the, you guys are getting more crap to write up this time and shake a stick at. I'm going to move that the property committee submit Jeremy's proposed budget to be submitted directly to the clerk's office for further action, period.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Like I said, I have nothing to go on to say this is absolutely wrong, so.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. And the future interim administrative coordinator looks like he has something to say.
Did you want me to present my budget in August next year for approval before submitting to exec finance? I have not done that with this committee since I switched over.
Let me throw something at you here. We're talking about having an administrator on staff,
Your mic's off.
right,
Your mic is off.
in the future. We passed a resolution last month to employ someone in the position of administrator. I think the whole process of budgeting may see different light when and if this happens.
Okay.
So I guess that would be my response.
We don't know what the process is going to look like a year from now.
Okay. I used to report to exec finance, so I would turn my budget in when I turned my budget in, and they went over it. But since I joined this August group, I've not presented a budget because I just handed over to exec finance. I guess that was short-sighted on my part. I should probably work towards getting my budget done prior to doing.
Exec finance is gonna have the final say anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good idea, but like he just did with his, your line items or whatever, and then you're done, then it goes from there.
I don't mind if you want to see it.
But you're right. I think, we will see a change in how the budgeting process works. And if I were to foresee what happens, I'm sure the administrator is going to want to see those budgets before he or she brings them to the appropriate committees. That's how I kind of foresee it happening. So.
Yeah, I think the administrator most likely will be proposing a budget, period.
Right.
And so they will be held accountable to have met with all the department heads and worked through the budgets, we hope.
Yep.
Yes,
That's my
why
hope.
we're hiring.
Yeah.
Good luck. Exciting.
Moving forward,
Okay.
employee screening policy. And I got to tell you, the rest of the items on the number 10 and my brain's a little fried after the beginning of this meeting. What are we talking about, employee screening policy here?
I thought we decided that last month.
I thought we decided that we were going to keep it on as an ongoing thing because there were so many other different things that are coming up as we go that we were just going to leave it in perpetuity, but.
Well, now, if I'm not mistaken, there have been some significant changes to the operation of this county since our last property committee meeting. Employee screening, I'm under the impression that's an HR issue. Is that what we're talking about?
No.
What are we talking about?
Coming into buildings is what we're talking about.
Oh, that screening.
That screening.
When the new building opens.
I see, I thought that was,
Or not.
would
Right.
fall under the security
No.
issues.
That's what it is.
Yeah, do you screen all employees?
Oh, do you,
And do you just start the guy at 8 o'clock, or do you start the guy at 6 o'clock, because some guys come in at 6:30? Do you let them come back in that door across the
employee
picture?
screening.
And that was all the discussions we had, but we never.
I think we had laid it out last month. I don't think it doesn't hurt to have it on here again, but
No.
it doesn't necessarily warrant further discussion either.
We decided to screen all the employees, I think. That
Yeah.
was what the
Yes.
I
discussion.
think that's accurate.
And-
I
but
guess
we-
that's why I'm,
But we never set a time, when are you gonna screen them? Because did we ever, because
have
some
to pay
guys come in at
somebody to do
6:30, some guys come in at 6:30, some people at 7. Do you have somebody there at 6:30 or 7?
I think we talked about 7:30,
And then to what?
that there'd be someone to screen people in. So obviously, if they come in other times,
well, and numbers,
In visiting with the sheriff, he said that he was able to accommodate an earlier hour because he could juggle staff to make it work. It wasn't going to be a major issue from them.
That's good.
but numbers 10 and 11 are connected because of that, because it's a monetary issue on whether you can have staff to do the screening. Whether it's meeting rooms and the public coming in, or it's employees with people who want to start at 7:30 so they get a good parking spot, which is another issue that maybe personnel could take care of.
Are you sure you want to go to this one this time?
I don't. I want to, since it's going to be on the agenda in perpetuity, I personally.
Who said perpetuity? Did you say that?
We can decide that it does not have to be that way.
You can personally do what you want to do.
Yeah, and today, I would like to have 10 and 11 on the agenda for our next meeting and move on to, well, that is items for the next meeting agenda. The only thing on this current agenda that maybe doesn't belong on the next meeting's agenda is number 7. That easement issue has been taken care of and will be addressed by the board on its next meeting. So if your minutes would reflect that, we can move on to next meeting date and time.
September 11th, right? Unless we're going to do something before then, huh?
Yeah, you're gonna have a meeting, you were talking about having another meeting, I don't know. Is that?
Will there be lists available prior to September 11th that I'm looking at possibility of 2 weeks would be the last Monday in August.
28th, yeah.
For what?
Yeah, we could probably produce that by the end of the
Have another meeting on the 28th, and then maybe if they could
I
bring in their list.
personally have a little issue with some Mondays coming up. And if I can't make it, I can't
What about
make it,
Tuesday?
but Wednesdays are great.
Wednesdays are great.
Oh, look at there, I do know. But you guys do what you gotta do.
I can't do Wednesday.
Wednesday you can't, then no, that's just,
Yeah, I know Wednesdays are not good for you.
I can do Mondays and and that might be a short one anyway.
Yeah, that's gonna be quick.
I'd have to be out here by 9:30, just an hour. I could come and
My
leave.
intent is that we deal with the list and the list only at that meeting. Although, maybe that won't be a short meeting.
Now, which meeting is this list? Next one?
The list of must-do items?
Yeah, is that for the next meeting?
We have not locked into a date yet, but
And if we could have Kurt here even on the phone.
We almost have to have Kurt here, don't we?
Yeah.
We need Kurt here, so we need to coordinate that.
well,
somebody-
let's tentatively set it for the 28th at 8:30.
And I'll come and at least I get to listen to part of it, and then you guys can argue the rest of the day.
Yeah. Well, and you could attend by Zoom as well.
No, we're talking
That
about,
would save
we're talking about
trip
2
less
meetings
here.
next month.
And we're talking about 8 or 8:30?
8:30.
Okay, are we talking about 2 meetings next month?
No, one
No,
more this
2
month.
meetings this
Oh,
month.
one more this
The
month.
28th.
Oh,
28th of
okay,
August.
okay.
And then the regular meeting of the 11th of September at 8:30.
September 11th, yeah.
Would you want to add on the agenda, an update from the, we don't really have a meeting name, a committee meeting name, I don't know what we're called. It's the department heads that are moving over to the new building.
Your meeting day after tomorrow, you said?
Yes.
So you would have possibly information to present on the 28th,
It's up to you. Do you want it the 28th or the 11th?
the 11th.
So
I
we would
wanna-
add that as an agenda item.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
What
Do
is
you want
your-
that as an agenda item? Okay.
What is your committee's official net title?
We don't have one. I don't.
Committee head?
We call them building meetings dash department. That's what we're calling them. We don't have a title. You can name us if you would like.
Refer to them as them.
Yes.
I texted.
It would have been easier had you
See
come
if
up
he'd
with
be
one, guys.
available on the 28th for in-person or telephone.
We can come up with one.
Whatever I write down, we'll have to figure out it.
Appreciate it.
Coordination.
I'll adjourn the meeting at 11 o'clock.